Hi there. I'm Dean Walker from a little outpost in the interwebs called Living Resilience, and this is a part of two parts of this, two pieces involved with this outpost in the interwebs. This is an episode of Poetry of Predicament podcast, which is a YouTube channel. You may well be watching that here. This is primarily an excerpt from a not too long ago episode of The Great Simplification from Nate Hagens and his now many conversations with Daniel Schmachtenberger, one of the greatest minds I think that's ever lived, and quite easily one of the greatest futurists that is now present on the planet. And this is one of the most extraordinary conversations I've ever seen from the two of them, primarily from Daniel, of course. And my many thanks to Nate Hagens for his ongoing exceptional work across the board in all matters of human-caused collapse of both Earth and human systems. As you know by now, if you've looked at any of the work that we do here in Living Resilience, you know that our work starts about where Nate's usually drops away, and that is at the inner work of collapse. You know, he'll mention a tiny bit of his own practices or his interest in human behavior and so on. But that's kind of a personal interest thing that he keeps off to the side. And indeed, this is where our work begins here in Living Resilience. So offering this in chunks. I will also put the link to the entire interview, which is three times longer than what you're going to watch today. And I'll keep my comments as briefly as possible. Uh, what I'd like you to consider is if you are not a member of the Living Resilience online uh, community space, we invite you to come and join in and check it out and perhaps jump into one of our online courses, particularly our current newest offering is one called Islands of Sanity in a Mad World. And it is truly specifically focused on mental health, relational health, psychological health, spiritual health in these times. And I think you're going to find a number of ways in which their conversation, specifically this first 30 minutes or so that I've excerpted for you, speaks to our collective and for some of us, very personal mental health concerns as we grapple with these issues, the issues that they begin speaking about. And whereas they have done multiple episodic conversations with one another last year, I think they did 12 hours or 15 hours or something. They didn't say nearly as much that is significant as they did in the first 30 minutes of this particular video. And the rest is absolutely worth watching. There's no question, but I'm really committed to getting the consumable chunks down to something within reason. I know we're all suffering deeply from the global pandemic of fire hose to the face 24/7 of too much content all the time, everywhere, including the gorgeous content, the really, really good and important content. It all becomes just an endless fire hose to the face at some point. So please do your best to get through this little over half hour excerpt from this conversation. My recommendation, strong recommendation, is that you may want to just watch this the first time and that without taking notes, without doing anything, and plan on watching it again a few days later. I really recommend this very strongly. I'm not trying to psychologize you or that I've got you figured out. I don't know. But just what I've seen is that there have been very few videos or content of any kind that has had this much concentrated absolutely relevant and important and urgent information and consideration in their conversation together. Uh, my recommendation, again, continuing what I just got through saying, watch it the first time, wait a few days, come in the second time with a notepad and allow yourself to write some notes about what it is. In fact, stop the video intentionally. Give yourself an hour and a half over time to be able to go through and make notes as you go and stop the video as you go. Because the subject matter, the content topics are that important. And the main points are that important. What they get to around the power of AI and the ubiquitously predicted effects and outcomes that are very, very possible or probable. Um, it's just worth slowing down, stopping it, taking notes, and especially noticing what is the effect on your system. That took me a third visit to the material. And that third visit is I didn't need to take notes anymore, although I kept them around and I did add, after a while, I did add additional notes in that third viewing. It's this is an extraordinary piece of content that could easily itself, just this roughly, let's say 45-minute video could be a year or more's worth of curriculum for a college course. This is that important and that laden with existentially weighted material. Um, I don't know how to lighten it up. I don't know how to kind of leave you with, well, and if you watch it enough, it'll all get happy or you'll see some light at the end of the tunnel. No, I don't think we will see that. And this is now the third piece of content I've specifically excerpted from Daniel Schmachtenberger in the past year or so, where he has decidedly shifted his tone in a number of these conversations, these presentations and conversations over the past year. And they carry a certain amount of gravitas that I had not seen in the roughly 10 years before that I've been tracking his work. I consider him to be one of the most important voices on the future of the current status of humanity on the planet and also our future. I listen when he talks and I tune out when it's the same. He's repeating what he did 5 years ago and so on, which is rare, but he does it. I pay attention when his tone shifts, like it's shifted here. And it's funny, it's not that he's that serious. In fact, you'll find him kind of oddly laughing, perhaps nervously in some of the points. But the content, it's unshakable. I just cannot like shoo away the mosquito in what he's saying. It is piercing content. And I just am inviting you to really consider it. Multiple watchings of this video, notes to self, and also perhaps again that third time and beyond to consider what is some of the inner work that one might need to take on in order to even accommodate, even take in this material fully. I suggest that this little phrase that we use about this work in living resilience, that it's the inner work of collapse. This is the type of material that sparks that inner work. That's a signal, okay, these strong feelings that you may be feeling, these strong reactions, these strong thoughts, these discordant thoughts, these may well signal your time to engage with your version of the inner work of collapse. So I look forward to your comments in this video. You may want to consider joining us in the online community space and living resilience to engage in these conversations and engage in some of the practices and circle work that we do to expand our capacity to be present in the face of this kind of material, this kind of an update about what we are actually facing. So, in an odd way, I invite you to enjoy this because it is solid, fantastic work of truth telling about what's actually going on. And in that way, I invite you to enjoy that purity, that strength of content, that integrity of content. And then I invite you to engage in whatever your inner process is to be able to really let it in, see how it can possibly shift you in what you're seeing about the human condition. So thank you for watching this episode, and I look forward to your comments in the comments area of this video, and hopefully look forward to seeing you join us in the Living Resilience online community space, and possibly in our most recent course, the Islands of Sanity in a Mad World course. Thank you.
I would like to welcome my colleague Daniel Schmachtenberger back to the program to take a deep dive on artificial intelligence potential impact on the environment and particularly climate change. I have recently gone to some energy tech climate conferences where AI is in every other presentation, at least, talking about how it's going to reduce emissions and be a general boon for the environment. My gut and my conversations with Daniel, Tristan Harris, and others tells me this is not likely the case. So this conversation is a follow-up to our original one on AI and the superorganism. This was a deeply informative and oftentimes disturbing conversation, especially the 20-minute in the beginning before we got to AI and climate. Was talking about the broader macro story of artificial intelligence, human power systems, and what's happening, and some worst case scenarios. So you be warned that the first 20 minutes are kind of intense. Personally, I think Daniel is directionally correct on what he lays out in this podcast. I hope that the magnitude of what he is predicting is incorrect on behalf of life and the things that I care about. I have to say, though, that since I met him 3 or 4 years ago, he's been very accurate on artificial intelligence and what's unfolding in our society with respect to AI. I think we're going to run into energy and other limits before what he suggests in this podcast manifests, but I defer to him on this topic. One final note is we keep this conversation at a high conceptual level, but his team has created a 20-plus page document of references, resources with actual data on what's going on the ground. We will update that in the show notes on YouTube and on the greatsimplification.com website. So you can look there for further data. The conversation continues, my friends. Please welcome Daniel Schmachtenberger. Hello, Daniel. Great to see you.
Good to see you, Nate.
Of the 100-odd topics that you and I could discuss relevant to human futures and in service of life, we're going to talk about artificial intelligence today. And even on that topic, there are many, many subsets, how it affects inequality, profits and power and military and corporate, different new technologies. But today, we are going to focus on what AI portends for climate change and the environment, because I don't think it's often discussed. So I just got back from a climate energy tech conference where many of the people presenting were offering this or that technology that was going to be better for climate because it was using artificial intelligence. So I know you and your colleagues, your team have been working on addressing this question Why don't we start by giving an overview of how artificial intelligence in its current form could be good for the environment in theory? What are the main threads from there?
Sure. There's a pretty comprehensive paper. Let me see the name: Tackling Climate Change with Machine Learning, that was written last year, that addresses pretty much all of the claims of how AI, machine learning, and the associated sensors and automation could help. And it's everything from being able to model natural phenomena better, like being able to model how icebergs are melting better to predict rates and things like that, to modeling atmospheric dynamics better for being able to do aerosol-based geoengineering more effectively, to being able to create efficiency gains in lots of areas that supposedly should create a decrease in energy or material use because of the efficiency gains. And then the really big areas are the idea of like AI being able to help fundamental scientific and technological breakthroughs, things like nuclear fusion in particular, and energy generation, energy storage, way better batteries, things like that. But nuclear fusion, room temperature superconductors, those are kind of like holy grail claims. But if you look at all of the areas where efficiency could be applied, if you think about all the places where you've got oil lines or natural gas lines, the ability to have sensors all along them that monitors a leak and that can, use some kind of machine intelligence to be able to identify where the leaks are happening, and then at minimum to direct people there, but pretty soon to kind of have automated robotic servicing of it happening. Obviously, you'll have less leaks. So there are lots of areas where if you're applying optimization to an efficiency problem, you'll get some gains.
And how many of those are theoretical, and how many of those have you seen evidence that are actually manifesting already to some small or greater degree?
The things that I think are for certain possible is wherever we're talking about sensors where there's lots of data and you need AI to be able to model all of that data, that's straightforward. Like that type of technology exists, is getting better. Ironically, one of the major applications of it is to make the extraction of oil cheaper and more efficient. And so, 92% of all oil companies are in major contracts with AI companies to develop their oil and fossil fuel extraction using AI techniques, everything from like super technologically advanced stuff, like being able to use AI on seismic records and underground acoustics to be able to see exactly where the underground resources are and stuff like that, to be able to make the exploration and exploitation costs much cheaper. And all the big AI companies are servicing that industry. NVIDIA is providing chips and working with big traditional energy and not on just the renewable side. And Microsoft Services has whole contracts and products developed exclusively for oil industry, things like that. But I would say those types of things where we're looking at automation, where we're looking at lots of data and the ability to make sense of that, that's a pretty solid thing. Where we're looking at also kind of marginal efficiency gains that don't require fundamental breakthroughs, that's going to happen. Where we're talking about fundamental breakthroughs, so the way Gates said it, I think, is kind of clear. He's like, the types of AIs we have so far as material innovation, tech innovation, speed up stuff that humans are already doing pretty well with, but they're not doing the types of things we're really interested in that humans aren't making much progress with. And so if you think about like AI has been used in nuclear energy and fission for a long time to help both with stability of the fission centers and things like that. And it's the breakthroughs in that space have been marginal. So things like, will it really create massive breakthroughs in the speed to fusion or things like that? Those, I would say, we can see why people think maybe, but there's no precedent for high confidence, particularly on any timeline of those things.
I don't know about you, but when I look at LinkedIn and I talk to people, not in my core circle, but in the broader people paying attention to the world, I think the consensus is that AI is going to be good for the environment because of many of the things that you said. It's going to make renewable technology and batteries and clean tech more efficient. And on a narrow boundary view, which you and I don't specifically use, we like to look at a wider boundary, and we're going to get to that in a second. It's positive for using less energy and materials. Would you agree?
I think that is a popular narrative. I think that there are a lot of people in the environmental space and the climate space who don't think that's true. But I think there's a lot of people who are broadly concerned about environment and climate, don't understand it in great detail. And I think there's a bunch of reasons to kind of buy that narrative. Obviously, from a marketing perspective, if I've got a product or service, then I look at all of the various market sectors and try to figure out how to market to them and why my thing will be useful to them. So AI in defense is one of the biggest topics. And it's kind of like there actually is no defense conversation that is not AI in defense right now. It's AI for not just like autonomous weapons and, drones, but it's also the precision targeting is AI. Also increasingly, comprehensive battle planning is happening on more complex AI systems. Intelligence gathering of huge amounts of intelligence that people have to sort through is not that useful, right? It's only useful with AI systems. And so similarly, if I want to talk about law enforcement, AI can actually show you where the bad guys are because now we can actually make sense of all of this data. Does that look like AI-empowered, ubiquitous digital technological surveillance? Yeah, which is pretty bad. But if you look at pretty much every sector, right, AI is going to radically improve education because now we can have these AI tutors that know everything. They get to tutor your kids directly, and AI is going to help old folks' homes because now you get to have these chatbots to talk with the old people so they aren't lonely, and it's going to improve medicine. So the idea that AI is going to radically improve climate change, like, okay, so climate is an influential topic. It affects international policy. It affects national policy. So we got to get those guys to think this is a good thing. And so let's talk about all the ways that it's going to help. So from a supply side marketing to important demographics perspective, of course, there's going to be a lot of resource that goes into that. And that's spin, right? So that's one thing. Now, when you look at just the rise of NVIDIA's market cap and associatedly everybody who's working in AI. So, you look at the top 10 companies by market cap right now, and they're all AI companies, right? So Apple's not an AI company, Microsoft's not an AI company exclusively, but fundamentally, that's one of their, if not their primary plays right now. Arguably, you could say the only one that is in the top 10 right now that isn't is Saudi Aramco, but increasingly, AI they're using their money from oil to fund AI efforts massively, and they're using AI to advance their oil efforts. So, and obviously this is new, that they're all AI companies. It was oil and defense and banking. That market sector being as big as it is and those companies being as powerful as they are means that there's a lot of marketing and a lot of lobbying and a lot of public influence. Consilience Project, we wrote a paper one time called Where Arguments Come From. And it was basically the think tank industrial complex, et cetera, kind of conversation of So there's an argument circulating all over the place that that was not a natural selection of good ideas. Good ideas don't get naturally selected. They get upregulated by whoever it is that has marketing budgets to get that idea out a lot and to be able to pay research firms to develop the research they want and authors and et cetera. So the where arguments come from thing is really important to think about. And of course, if we're saying, okay, well, what about the environmentalists that are concerned about how much AI is actually going to radically damage the environment? Do they have comparable marketing budgets? And do they have the correlation of force and means between those is as bad as it could be? It's kind of like peace activists compared to the military-industrial complex, correlation of force and means. There's another reason that people want to believe it is not just that they're being sold it like crazy, but a couple of reasons. One is it's kind of where all the money is happening, right? And so if I want to get ahead and at minimum not be left behind, I don't want to be against the thing that I can't stop, and everybody who's riding is going to get ahead and everyone who's not is going to be left behind. So I would like to believe that riding that thing is good and maybe I can steer it in a good direction, right? Like, duh. And that's why even in the just not AI and climate, just AI space, there's this joke in the AI safety community that the fastest way to accelerate AI risk is starting an AI safety org. Because, OpenAI was started as an AI safety org to try to protect the world against the dangers of DeepMind, and now it is radically accelerating. Then Anthropic left because they were scared of its acceleration, wanted to make a safety org, but then they're like, hey, in order to be able to really test our tech, we have to build tech, which means we need a lot of money. So they took $300 million from Google, and now they're racing. And then Elias left because he was concerned, and now he's got a company focused on superintelligence. And so it, and having privately talked with, many people in the space, in addition to whatever their other concerns are, one of them is my job will be automated by AI soon. Right now, all of my friends who aren't working in AI safety and are working in AI development are making boatloads of money. They make their own little startup and get acquired for a stupid amount by one of the big ones. It does some nothing. It doesn't even matter what it is. Like AI applied to, I have a brilliant friend who's basically doing AI image recognition applied to taking certain kinds of files and putting them online with like a couple % more efficiency than the previous type of image recognition. And he's like, I can get acquired for like a tremendous amount of money for something I can build in a couple of years. And I'm probably not ever going to be able to have a job in the future. And so that's another reason to want to be on board with the like AI is good story. And then the other one is that if you really care about climate change, you're probably pretty depressed. And the hope doesn't look that good. And any kind of hope. So it's like, why is the Jesus is going to come save us all narrative compelling for some people? Why is the UAPs that we're seeing are benevolent aliens and they'll save us all compelling? AI is another version of that. Like there's no good sign that the answer is going to come from us. We seem pretty intractably fucked. Maybe something radically smarter than us can solve all the stuff. Which is, of course, kind of like a regress to a childhood psyche still wanting a parent who's going to kind of figure it out. So AI does a very believable job of that currently for some people.
Just listening to that brief summary that you just gave, it really sounds like a Twilight Zone episode, like science fiction that would have been written 30, 40 years ago. And yet this is our world that we're living right now.
So wait, just real quick, in terms of the sci-fi episode, we had somebody put a clip together of things that people who are like running the top AI labs publicly have said. You clip it together, and like many people have probably seen where Sam Altman, has said several times on stage, AI will probably kill everyone, but it'll make a bunch of really profitable companies first. And
people laugh at that?
And everybody laughs and invests, and the market cap goes up. And then,
what does that say about our species?
okay, so, and then Elon said many things on this topic, but one of the clips recently was him saying, I used to be kind of bummed out by this, like, AI will probably kill everything. But then I thought to myself, would I like to be here to see the AI apocalypse, or would I not like to be here? And I guess I'd like to be here to see it. And but these are the people who are building the most powerful AI systems in the world. And the argument is we can't stop it because of races. We can't stop everybody. If we can't stop everybody, then whoever gets to kind of AGI dominance first will run everything forever. And so there is, if you feel like you could participate in that game and you think about it this way, there is only one game. There's only one game, which is be the leader of or a part of the group that makes it to AGI supremacy first. Because if so one, if you can't stop it, every attempt to try to stop it is futile. It sounds a lot like the Borg, or like Saruman saying to Gandalf, like, it's inevitable, you must join Sauron. Like, it has that kind of feeling, and you mentioned sci-fi. But so you hold this inevitability argument, and so now the fact that I'm not trying to stop it isn't an ethical issue, because couldn't anyways, right? And then if you hold, and then this is one of the most fascinating motivated reasoning cases. Actually, I have never seen motivated reasoning that like captured this many smart people this intensely, this quickly. It is the superlative case of motivated reasoning in my life experience, where everybody who ends up saying I need to run an AI company based on this argument says, who the AGI, the emergence of AGI is now inevitable. We don't even need major breakthroughs in cognitive architectures. We're going to get there just by scaling the stuff we have. Nobody could stop it, because you can't stop everybody. You can't stop China, whatever. And it will probably be dystopic, maybe kill all hydrocarbon life, like quite likely. In which case, if I get there first and it becomes totally out of control, it doesn't really, I'm not safer. But if there's any chance that whoever gets there first still kind of controls it or can merge with it, which is why, Neuralink, brain-computer interface, Elon is working on that, Google's working on it, like almost all of the kind of big players are working on. And you'll hear Nick Bostrom say, there publicly recently, there are lots of reasons to prefer to be digital than biological. Biological things die and suffer and are limited and et cetera, and are only work on this planet, and AI things can work in space and be eternal and become digital gods. And Ted Chu, who was the previous head of the Abu Dhabi Sovereign Wealth Fund, was also the chief economist of GM for a while, wrote this book called Transhumanism and Human Potential, and basically said there's this kind of religious narrative of humans ascending into angels or higher selves or overmens or gods or something like that. And AI and synthetic bio and brain-computer interface is what actually delivers that, where we can do whole brain emulation and upload our consciousness onto the cloud and move from being slime-based computational systems to crystalline-based computational systems that can, live forever and et cetera. So that wackadoodle metaphysical idea is pretty universal and dominant in the AI acceleration space. And as a result, if somebody holds that consciousness and life are purely the results of computation, that universe happened for who knows why, Big Bang, why are the constants what they are, who knows. Eventually on this earth, life started to emerge somehow. And then somewhere after life, around neural network, something called consciousness emerged. And it emerged because of a complexity of computational process that's happening in neurons and whatever. And it's because this hydrocarbon thing can do computation. That's the kind of computational neuroscience models that everything that is happening in the body that matters is to support the brain, and everything that's happening in the brain is basically to support computations. And that it's computation running on this hydrocarbon, i.e. slime-based computational substrate. And that as soon as we get adequately complex computational substrates on silica, you can run the same thing. But that the evolutionary process, David Pearce is probably the guy that has done more on this than anybody. David Pearce at Oxford and Nick Bostrom created the transhumanism movement together. And David Pearce has something called the Abolitionist Project, which is that the moral imperative for humanity is to abolish the potential for pain and suffering from the entire universe by genetically engineering opioid receptors out of humans that could experience pain, and not just humans, but all animals and all life, genetically engineering predation out of universe, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, once we can get past genetically engineering us to just being computational beings, that's the ideal. So if, and he says, evolution selected for us to be, to survive, which meant lots of suffering motivations, not to be happy or whatever. We can do a better job now. So if you hold that biology, life, is basically just the happenstance that was able to bootload itself on this planet, right? And Elon has said hydrocarbon life is probably the bootloader for silica life. It loaded first to be able to evolve to the human place, to be able to make the silica system that will then take all the hydrocarbon life's atoms and repurpose it into the silica system. That's what it means that it's the bootloader. Because silica didn't automatically self-organize on the surface of the earth, but hydrocarbons did, and they figured out how to make the silica thing, and then the silica will use all the atoms to make the thing it wants to make. So the idea that we're the bootloader, but that's awesome because the hydrocarbon things basically just suffer and are very limited and have cognitive biases and are emotional and are kind of nasty and are limited to this planet, which is going to be screwed, but the AI systems can go interplanetary and, be digital gods. You don't care about killing all life. It's a moral imperative to kill this thing and replace it with that other thing, right? So that kind of terrestrial metaphysics, it's not that everybody is motivated by that. They're motivated by different things. But that one is very deep for a lot of folks. People should read Nick Land and Nick Bostrom and David Pearce and Kurzweil on this to see who are the philosophers that kind of all of Silicon Valley follows. So there's an argument that whoever gets to AGI first, if AGI takes everything over, I'm not still going to be able to control it, but maybe I can merge with it. Brain-computer interface, orienting towards whole brain emulation. But maybe I can control it. And if I can control it, then whoever gets to AGI first runs everything. So if you look at Alex Karp, the CEO of Palantir, which is AI applied to intelligence and military capacities, his public talks recently, he says US has to get AGI dominance and then use that capacity to ensure that no one else ever gets it. Now, what that means, okay, well, how do you ensure that China doesn't advance? Well, because AGI dominance can turn their nukes off, can turn their banks off, can whatever you need to do, right? So it's actually like an open public call for a global one world government, infinite monopoly of power with no checks and balances on it. Sitting next to Eric Schmidt and, the heads of U.S. military and defense being like, yep, this is the imperative. So there's the idea, if we get to AGI and can control it, we run the world. If we get to AGI and can't control it, at least we have the best shot of knowing how to merge with it. If anybody else gets there first, not only are we losers forever, but we have no say in anything ever again, because the AI will now run everything. So if I care about anything ever, the only play I have is get to AGI first. And whatever I have to harm to get there first is worth it, because then that's the only way I can do stuff. That is kind of an ubiquitous argument. And so why I say the motivated reasoning, is everybody who makes that argument argues why it's inevitable we're going to get there. It'll probably be dystopic. Maybe it'll be utopic. But I need to be the one to get there first because I'll make the least dystopic version for everybody. And it's like, really? Really? Like, why? Everybody's argument is that they're the best ones to do it. Not like, I think that guy is the best qualified. Let me go help that project. Nobody makes that argument. And so you're like, do you believe that yourself? Or is that just the public rhetoric you're giving? That's the motivated reasoning story.
I told your colleague, Zach Stein, on our podcast that at times like this, I long for just the days of when I was only worried about peak oil. Because what you just described is not a science fiction novel. It's a Stephen King novel. It's in the horror genre. So I want to get back to the environment and climate change because that was the focus of why we wanted to unpack this. But let me just ask you a follow-up. In the minds of those AI accelerationist humans who are working on this, what about redwood groves and dolphins and hummingbirds and earthworms and bumblebees and the 10 million species that we share this blue-green earth with?
So if I am being an AI accelerationist saying China is rapidly on its way to AGI dominance in a war, we have to get there first or lose, or some other version of that, right? And you bring up that question, depending upon what marketing hat I have on, I could answer it a few different ways. One way, like the most true way, is all of those things are good sources of atoms that the AI will use to build the things it wants in the future.
Seriously?
So if people have not watched Eliezer Yudkowsky talk about AI risk, Eliezer founded MIRI, Machine Intelligence Research Institute, and I would say has put more time into the topic of AI risk than anyone, is clearest on that. And he says, look, it's not that in most scenarios, the AGI or the ASI, superintelligence, it's not that it wants to kill all humans. It just wants to do whatever its objective function is, and it needs atoms to do that, and things happen to be made of atoms. In the same way that most people, when they're relating to those other animals, don't have hatred and vitriol to the redwood trees and the whatever. They just want wood. They want stuff, and the trees are made of wood, and the animals are made of meat, and the nature is made of energy and materials. And so we turn it into the substrate of the shit we want more.
Whoa. So it's just a higher level scaling of that same dynamic.
I can, ChatGPT has all these guardrails on what it's not allowed to say, but you can figure out hacks to kind of jailbreak it and get it to say things, and then there are obviously open source ones that are not. So we were playing with it a little while ago and got it to make a bunch of answers about how AI can kill the whole world, just a bunch of things. How would it use synthetic bio to kill all humans? How would it use nanotech? How would it use on and on to just see what it will actually say publicly? And it gave very, very detailed plans on how to kill everybody using all those techniques publicly in the non-jailbroken version. And I'll actually share that document, and you can link it in show notes if people want to have a look at it. And so one of the questions was I was asking about if it could start to run on a quantum computer and work on optimizing the number of qubits of the quantum computer on an advanced quantum computer running a more advanced version of its transformer, how intelligent would it be relative to humans? And its answer was, well, IQ is an anthropogenic human-centric score that is, irrelevant and can't assess all of these things. If we were trying to use IQ, it would be something like millions of times what a human is. And it would be comparable to the intelligence difference between a single-cell creature and a human. And so humans can't begin to fathom the nature of what that thing is, any more than a cell can fathom what it's like to be a human.
I have a pretty strong opinion on the way forward. I'm gonna hold on to that.
So wait, you asked the question about redwood trees and bees and nature and whatever.
Yes.
And so the deepest answer is like the AGI question long term is those are all made of atoms and have energy and stuff in them. The the answer that would be given probably, so if you're focused on AI military dominance, so after China did its military drill near Taiwan as a kind of a punishment to Taiwan last month, the U.S. Pacific Naval Commander initiated Operation Hellscape. Maybe some of the people have seen. I like that it's not like called Operation Mockingbird or something. It's just Operation Hellscape, just kind of like openly acknowledging. And Operation Hellscape is fill the Taiwan Straits with so many automated robotic kill drones that anything that moves in there is dead instantly. And okay, so that's now, right? Like that's not in the future. That's now. If people have not watched Anduril videos on what the state of integrated automated kill webs are and stuff like that, it's worth watching. So if you're focused on imminent World War III, where AI is the kind of primary game changer applied to everything, and someone says, but what about bees and redwood trees? Then you're like, you can focus on irrelevant shit because you aren't actually playing to win. But there's really only one game that matters right now, and it doesn't have anything to do with bees or redwood trees. And I have a limited amount of attention, and all of my attention is allocated to what it must be allocated to. Now, the answer that they would give publicly would be more like, if you want to protect bees and redwood trees, you better support that we get to AGI dominance first, because we are the good guys and the Chinese are the bad guys, and we will protect environmental laws and et cetera, et cetera. So the only way to care about those things is to support us in our AGI dominance.
I'm actually feeling somewhat ill. Like I have a pit in my stomach right now. I knew some of these things, but this is just. And by the way, the reason that you and I decided to schedule this is because we believe that the environmental movement, the climate movement, is unaware of the magnitude of impact that artificial intelligence will have on the issues that we care about. But I have to ask you a question first to finish this section, which is I fear your answer. But in the same way that the movie Idiocracy was a comedy and it ended up being kind of a documentary, Black Mirror was like this futuristic dystopian thing, but that actually is starting to be a reality with some of the things that were described in that show. So here's my question. I'm actually afraid to ask you this, but we're doing this. I'm doing this podcast. I'm trying to pass the pro-social baton to more humans to change the initial conditions of the future and to kind of fight power in service of life. But based on what you're telling me, what if 95% of humans absolutely understand and concur about these risks? Are they just like gnats that can be swatted away because of the power dynamics that exist in this industry and what's happening?
Not yet, but very soon, which is why now is important to talk about this.
And I find it kind of funny, I find it kind of sad. The dreams in which I'm dying are the best I've ever had. I find it hard to tell you, 'cause I find it hard to take. When people run in circles, it's a very, very mad world. Mad world. Mad world. Mad world. Ow!